Everybody, it's Adam from LUCIDPIXUL. Today I want to talk about something that is at the core of every single one of us as artists on a daily basis. Now, as a teacher online, as a teacher in colleges, the messages I get from friends and from fellow artists and comments on YouTube, one of the number one things that I get is when people get creatively stumped. They might have started off with an idea, they were in a really good creative mode, something sparked their curiosity and sparked their creativity, and then after about 20-30 minutes of fiddling around with an idea, it gets lost somewhere down the lines. And I have learned through the years, through my own trial and error, through my own struggles, the things that kill creativity. All right? And I want to share those with you today because as digital painters, we might be under the belief that we are at this great advantage, that we have all of these tools and technology at our disposal as artists. On a certain level, yes, it is a huge benefit. My mother's a good example. She's a fine artist, and every time she sees me do a select transform of something or do a little bit of a liquefy tool on something, she kind of sits there and goes, "Oh, if I did that in oil painting, that would have been 2 days' work." It's a big deal. But there are also certain obstacles that really get in the way of our creativity in a big way that many traditional painters don't have to deal with. So to demonstrate what I'm talking about, if we look at the screen, I got my glove on this time, okay? If we look at the screen, we're gonna see that I'm on this really, really good Facebook page, which I strongly recommend you go check it out. It's basically it's called High Resolution Paintings and Close-Ups. And on this Facebook page, and I've noticed a lot of friends on this as well, people just post paintings that they like. But most of the people have exquisite taste, I might say. So with that said, here, just let me kill this window here. If we scroll through, we're going to see the works of many masters, many absolutely fantastic master painters in all of their complexity, okay? And, Thomas Eakins and George Dunlop Leslie and so on and so forth. Okay, these beautiful, beautiful works of art. Stuff that I truly believe we should all learn from. Instead of learning from other current artists, although there are some great ones out there, I think this is really at the roots of where great art happens because it comes from an era when quality trumped quantity, right? And this whole, if you're one of my students or if you've heard, I probably mentioned this in other art talks, I think speed painting is bullshit. To be quite frank with you, because it's basically saying screw quality. Let's just pump these out like we're working at a chicken factory, right? It's the fast food of art, in my opinion, and it's garbage. But when you look at this kind of stuff, we can see where a person's real life and care and thought goes into this. These are moments in people's lives. Now, you might be looking at these paintings feeling something that a lot of artists feel, and that is discouragement, right? You might look at it and your first initial reaction is, wow. Your second reaction is, oh, I suck, right? And you look at this and you see it as an achievement of great complexity. Now, something that I've learned and something that I share with my students as well is when I was younger, when I was more of a novice artist, when I was more of a beginner, I was straight out of school, I'd studied animation, or maybe I just made that transition into painting or whatever the case might be. I would look at the works, at beautiful works of art like this that are very complex, the compositions, the colors, the value scheme, the rendering, the understanding of anatomy and form and light and shadow, intimidated the crap out of me. And I remember what I used to think was that the artist who painted this had to understand more complicated things than I do. They were smarter, they had bigger brains, they were capable of handling more than I could. And as years passed, as I progressed through and slowly started to pick up on different principles and techniques and improve artistically, I started to realize that I'm no smarter now than I was when I was 15 years old. I'm no smarter, okay? I've just, I'm 40 now, so I've had years to accumulate knowledge. My knowledge bank has improved. But that's not what has made me a better artist. What made me a better artist made me be able to accomplish more complex works of art was my ability to simplify. Not complicate, but simplify. So instead of, when I look at a painting like this, let's see if we can find something that's intimidating as all frickin' hell here. Let's see something that has a lot of complexity to it. Oh, well, look at that one. Okay. Oh, look here. Let's keep going a bit. I want to find something that really kind of makes us feel a little bit humble. Okay, look at that. All right, this is by Ralph Oberg. Beautiful painting. Okay. When you look at this painting, you see the rolling hills, you see the beautiful rendering of the clouds and the grass and the flowers and the goats and it's just, oh God, it's just so beautiful. There's so much going on. If I looked at this 20 years ago, I would have been intimidated and scared by it. I would have looked at things and looked at the big picture and tried to capture the big picture. Started from scratch, started one corner and worked my way across to the other end and hope for the best. And usually wasn't particularly happy with what I ended up with. But when I look at it now, I've learned over the years to break down everything that I see into small, bite-sized steps. Everything is a step-by-step process. The values, the colors, the composition, the anatomy, the rendering, the detail, all of these things. I've learned over the years to break these down into simple, bite-sized, digestible pieces of information. And I go step through a work of art until I end up with the final product. I don't look at this and get scared anymore. Because when I look at it, I'm not looking at all of this rendering complexity. I'm looking at this through the eyes of both an artistic artist and a technical artist. I'm no smarter than I was when I was 15 years old. Now, with that said, the same thing can apply to colors, can apply to values, can apply to composition, can apply to anatomy, can apply to all of these different things. So if I take anything here, let's take this painting by Walter Everett, one of my personal favorites. Okay, if we look at this painting by Walter Everett, let's view the image full screen. Beautiful, beautiful work of art. When you look at this, I don't know about you, but at first glance, when I look at Walter Everett's work, I just see complexity. Or that's at least how I would have seen it 20 years ago. But when I look at this work of art right here, I think to myself, this guy is a master of simplification. All right? If we look at his values, let's just break down his values. And before I go on talking about his values, I want to draw your attention to this video by Noah Bradley, if you haven't seen it already. It's a very popular video where he does a master study, where he takes you through the process of doing master studies. And one of the things he talks about is looking at great paintings and trying your best to break them down into 3 values. All right? 3 values, that's it. 1, 2, 3. Not 25 values, not 56 values. 3 values. Simplification. Okay? So I'm not going to repeat what Noah Bradley's already taken care of, and he explains it beautifully in this video. So go and check it out if you get the chance. Just do a Google search for Noah Bradley Master Studies. But let's go back to Walter Everett over here. Okay, to this painting over here. All right? When you look at this, you see shadows, you see children, you see all the nuns beautifully painted with all of the beautiful rendering of the fabric, and this girl over here, and the expression on her face, and the hat, and all of these details of the grass and the lambs. And as you look closer, you see the nuns in the background, and the old person over here, and the beautiful way he's painted her hand, and all the flowers and branches that are dissecting the whole piece. And you're sitting there going, oh my God, where do I even start? Instead, do this. Look for those 3 values. If I look for the midtones, let me just think of it as light, medium, and dark, okay? If I look at the midtones, look at how he's beautifully grouped everything into a single group. It comes right across like this, okay? And he's created one single group for his midtones. Look at his dark values, all these dark areas here. And look at how we can trace this form all the way around, across the shadow, like that, and all the way around like this, and capture, and even here where it kind of trickles into here as well. One single form for the darks that encompass the entire painting right across. And the light values, he's dissected those a little bit, okay, but we got this nice big group, all the nun sets that are all grouped together, and we got a little bit of a separation here and a little bit of separation here. And by separating these into 3 simple values, you can see, as soon as you see that, you can see that he has used his dark values to capture the entire overall form, and he's used his high values to create focal points. Pay attention. He's got one over here, one big focal point over here. He's got this little child that's separated a little bit. And then he's got this girl over here, this kind of Alice in Wonderlandy type of nomadic girl, right? Who's sitting on her own. And what that does is it immediately draws your attention to her. So what he's done is he's created two strong focal points, or three technically. He's got the nun over here that's nicely isolated. He's got the girl over here, and he's got this little girl that's kind of a secondary focal point, right? And in this, he has captured all of this incredible complexity. Now, what has Walter Everett done in this painting to make it feel more complex and less contrived, less deliberate? Well, if you look through a lot of his paintings, I'm not going to go through all of his paintings today, but if you look through a lot of his paintings, you're going to see how he'll have this very, very complex or a very simplified value scheme, the light, medium, and dark, or he might do it with color as well. He does the same thing with color. And then he dissects his image like a stained glass window with all of these branches that will come across and dissect and have all these beautiful plays of negative space between all of these branches. And when you actually when you see things, when you actually notice how he's actually mosaicked his painting using these branches, and then you go outside and you look at a tree for the first time. I remember when I went outside in my backyard and I looked at the tree before all the leaves grew, and I went out and I because I was studying his work, I went outside and I looked at a tree and I looked through it at all the negative space and I went, wow, that's beautiful. All of a sudden, I shifted my perspective and kind of saw things the way he did. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at trees in a whole new light and looking at the beautiful shapes in the negative space and how he played with it. But there's these multiple levels of simplicity that he's superimposed one on top of the other. Now, if we can do the same thing with color here, okay? So let me see if we can find something. Let's close these windows. Let me see if we can just backtrack and look at color. Again, we could technically use a million colors in our painting, but do we want to? Okay, is it going to work to our benefit? So let's just look at a painting, another one by Walter Everett here. Since we're on the topic of Walter Everett, let's view our image. Let's see if we can zoom out a little bit. Okay, can we zoom out more? Here, if we look at this piece by Walter Everett as well, if we think about the different numbers of colors, and by colors I don't mean, you know, light blue, dark blue, you know, violet, no. Blue, a hue. Look at different hues and how he's played with these different hues. We've got blues. We've got our sepia tones, kind of our golden colors over here that seep through. He probably started with a sepia base, a lot of very traditional technique, right? And then there's more blues and more, call it oranges, right? So blues and oranges. He's got light blue over here and a little bit of a deeper redder orange and a little bit more and a bit of a violet over here in the corner. And there's very, very little, you know, like a little bit of pinker color here. He's essentially really going with two colors and an accent of a third, if we really think about it. There's very few colors in here, but look what a beautiful balance. Look at what beautiful harmonies we find in this painting. So he hasn't gone ape shit and gone to town with thousands of different colors. Let's look at this one. You know, essentially I see two colors, two different hues, blue and orange again. Pretty simple stuff. Nothing too complicated. Now, then he gets into his fancy stuff here, when he goes all crazy. You know, he's got his oranges and yellows and pinks and blues. He was probably listening to Chopin. I paint like that when I'm listening to Chopin. I go colorful as all hell. Here he's playful as well, and he's got a lot of other things going on. But in a lot of his paintings are very, very, very simplified. Okay? And you look at the paintings, look at the work of Caravaggio. Okay? Let's go and check out Caravaggio. My bad. Okay. Caravaggio was actually, up until very recently, a lot of people believe that Caravaggio only used like 4 colors, like white, red, yellow, and black or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Don't quote me on that. But he used a very, very, very limited palette of colors. And it wasn't until after he passed away that people got a chance to actually go and check out his studio. And they found, you know, a large collection of paint. But if you look at his paintings, I mean, look at how many of his paintings that just are white, yellow, you know, white, yellow, red, and black. White, red, yellow, and black with maybe a little accent of a green in there or something like that. But he had tons and tons of images. Yes, I know he's a very dark painter. He had issues, so they say, right? Okay, you see all these different paintings and how simplified his color palette is. This is something I will really drive home with you today. All right? This is at the crux of where us as digital painters very often get stumped and struggle artistically. If you first started painting digitally, then you were given this as your medium. You were given this as your tool, probably something like Photoshop. And it is convenient. I love Photoshop. It has allowed me to work worldwide and teach worldwide, right? I work as a freelancer. I work at Fantasy Flight, and I teach at a school, and I have my online mentorship and all this different stuff. This program and the online world is it's the foundation of my career, right? But I didn't start there. And as such, I had this existing knowledge that I just translated into digital painting. And that knowledge is the fact that you don't need 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000 colors to achieve mastery. You don't need 1,000,000,000 values to achieve mastery. In fact, you're much better off limiting your options, not expanding them, limiting them. Because if I turn to you and I say, create a painting that has a lovely color balance to it, that has a nice color balance or a value balance to it, and I hand you one of these, well, you have access to billions and billions and billions of colors. Oh, and there's all these cool swatches. Oh, and you can go and do all different kinds of fun things. And oh, look at this. Oh, and I can press this button. And oh, all these great things. Isn't this swell? Oh, and look at that, all my different color schemes. And none of that's going to do you any good. The very fact that I'm working on Magic Picker here, yeah, cool. It's a nice looking Magic Picker, but to be completely honest with you, it is absolutely unnecessary. It's useless. You know, you don't need it. You don't need it. All you need is to learn how to make the best with what little means you have. So my suggestion for you is, instead of using, well, of course you need a color picker to get colors in a digital painting program, but instead of, you know, using every single color at your disposal, which is what a lot of digital painters do, they try their best to use as many as they can, and then they get very frustrated that they can't make their colors work, or they get scared. A lot of digital painters are scared of color. Color week at my mentorship is always when students go, uh-oh, I was worried about this class. Or I was hoping for it the most because this is what I struggle with the most. It's because of this, okay? So instead, just see how far you can get just painting with red and playing with nothing but saturation and value. But go here in the reds and just see how far you can push it, or go into your yellow. Look at that. Look at this yellow. Look it up here in the color picker. This yellow versus this yellow versus this yellow versus this yellow. You have a lot of range with one color, right? But if I was trying to do and play with all of these different hues and saturations, but also play with all of these different hues, I'd have a heart attack. So start with one. See how far you can get with one color. Then try with two colors, with two hues at least, right? Same thing with value. Start with two values. Then add a third. And see how far you can push it. When you work that way, this is one of the discoveries that my students make when they're working when they're studying my course. When you realize just how far you can push one color, the whole idea of bringing a second color in to harmonize with the first one is a big decision to make. It's not just, well, you know, I'll go with orange and blue. No, it's a big decision. That decision has visual impact, has narrative impact. It affects the story, it affects the feel, it affects the balance, it affects everything. So bringing in a second color is a big deal. Bringing in a third color? Whoa, whoa, the third hue into your painting? Calm down. That's almost like, that's taking a painting from being something very warm and cool balanced, or not, into something that's like a children's birthday party. But what I see a lot of people do, a lot of people who are starting off with color, they've got blue and yellow and orange and green and purple and you name it. And then they get all frustrated that they can't balance those colors. It's a huge ordeal balancing 6 colors. It's extremely difficult to balance 6 colors. You start one at a time. You simplify the process. And the curse that we have as digital painters is the fact that we have too many options at our disposal. The same thing applies to composition, the same thing applies to color, the same thing applies to value, the same thing applies to anatomy. If I turn to you and I say, for instance, draw the human body. Draw the human body. Anatomically accurate human body. Well, if you haven't studied anatomy at all, you're probably going to sit there and go, okay, well, I guess this is what the shoulder looks like, and you're going to get lost and it's going to look weird. When you study anatomy, you don't study everything. because we've got thousands of muscles and bones in our body. You start with the biceps, the triceps, and then when you get into the forearms, you do the brachioradialis and your extensors and your flexors, and all the muscles of your hand and all the muscles of your face. And you learn the back muscles and the muscles that connect to the shoulder blade and the serratus and the latissimus and the abdominals and your quadricep compartment and all that kind of fun stuff. You break it down and learn every single muscle individually and how they connect to every bone individually. That's how I teach, and that's how you need to learn in order to learn anatomy. But it's not until then that you've broken down and learned every single muscle individually, which is a lot easier to learn than thousands of muscles simultaneously. In fact, it's pretty much impossible to learn 1,000 muscles simultaneously, that you're actually going to learn how to do things. So remember, more is not more. Less is more when it comes to painting, and less is more when it comes to learning as well. You break it down into bite-sized pieces, you make the whole process simpler for yourself, and when you combine all of that knowledge together in the end, you start to be able to tackle very complex things. But don't just jump into the deep end without a swimming lesson expecting not to drown. You will drown. All right? So hopefully you enjoyed my talk. I'm sorry again that it took me so long to put out a video, but I've had a lot of stuff going on. If you're interested in the LUCIDPIXUL private mentorship, I am completely booked, I believe, until August. So you can reserve in advance, of course, but I'm not going to be taking any more students on now for another at least month and a half or something like that. But get in touch with me. I'll let you know what the openings are. Of course, I'll leave all the links in the description below. Remember, we have the Brush Sauce Theater, the art contest that I do with the wonderful Mr. Tyler Edlin, and you can go into the description. There's a link to the Google Plus page where you can check out all the other contestants and people who are submitting their work and find out what it is and submit your own work and get free professional critiques from me and Tyler. So that's pretty awesome stuff as well. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Take care.